Hi, my name is Tiffany Jolly. I'm a technical theater major and my emphasis is in sound. And I'm going to talk a little bit about lights and sound design in theater. First, I wanted to talk about lights and why they are important. First is the obvious reason that lights make it so we can see the stage and the actors. Lights are one of the more obvious parts of technical theater because it has emphasis on actors, costumes, and set. Lights are also important for setting the mood of the play. For example, if anyone saw Dracula in the last few weeks, there are multiple scenes where green light was used. This was a choice made because green light does not happen naturally. In nature, there can be red light, yellow light, or even white light, but green light is not natural. So it set the mood to feel eerie and supernatural, which is what we were going for during Dracula. Um, so there are 4 controllable qualities of lighting, and they are intensity, which is how bright the lighting is, distribution, which is how evenly spread out the light is, the color of the lights, which can be mixed according to what the designer and director want, and movement. Movement refers to not only the lighting instruments physically moving, but also lights fading in and out. I actually have some experience in lighting, but it's very minimal. In my opinion, lighting is one of the hardest jobs in technical theater after stage managing. There's a lot that goes into it, and you have to know both how lights work and how lighting instruments work. And about electricity, because there are so many lighting instruments and they all have different things that they can do. Lighting can be complicated, but it's so very important. Not only does it make the stage visible to the audience, but it can show changes in time, place, or the mood of the play. The last part of lighting I want to talk about is lighting plots and charts. So to an untrained eye, they can be kind of confusing, but they are so important to how lighting is set up. They can tell you what kind of lighting instrument you need and where it needs to be set up, what position they need to be in, how they need to be focused, how it needs to be connected so that it can be controlled by the lighting board. If anyone wants to see an example of a light plot, there's an example on page 414 in our Essential Theater textbook. And there's also an example of a lighting instrument chart on page 417. There's so much that goes into lighting design. I could probably talk about it for hours, but I'm just going to leave it there for now and move on to sound. So sound is actually one of my favorite topics because that's actually what I want to do someday. It's what I'm majoring in. I love sound and sound design because it adds so much and we don't always think about it. The 4 main functions of sound are to evoke the mood and atmosphere of a scene, to reinforce an action, to reinforce the performer's voices, and to support the production style or comments on the action. If you think about any of the movies that you've seen, there's almost always an underscore to add feelings to a scene. If it's a sad scene, then there might be like solemn music playing. If a character is giving a heartfelt monologue or a speech in a scene, then there might be some inspirational music playing. And if there's a car chase, then there's going to be some actiony, exciting music to add to that intensity. So there's 3 categories to sound, and they're verbal, which is the actors' voices, non-verbal, or music and sound effects, and realistic, which is sound that is identifiable by recognizable sources. Sometimes in scripts there are sound directions that have to be followed as part of like the overall story, but often designers will study scripts to search for other opportunities to use sound to add to the story. One of the hardest parts for me in sound is finding the right sound effects for a show or a scene. For example, in the script, if a script calls for a doorbell effect, there are plenty of doorbell effects out there that could be purchased and used, but not everything is going to sound like how the designer may want it to sound. And they might end up having to record the sound themselves. Recording your own sound can be nice because if you record a sound, then you then own that sound and you can use it whenever you want. However, to have the right equipment to be able to use that sound could be a little difficult. It can get kind of pricey. And finding the right sound in music can be difficult and time-consuming process. And the director and sound designer might not always see eye to eye on the sound effects that the designer has chosen. I think we're in a really cool age of technology. There's so much that we can do with sound now that we didn't used to be able to. We can record or buy sound effects or music and then use different sound equipment and programs to adjust the sound to what we want it to be. We can speed it up, we can make it higher pitched, we can shorten the length or loop it to play over and over. There's so much that can be done, and it's really cool. Sound is just an amazing way to add emphasis on feelings or actions that are happening on stage. It can be used subtly or very obviously. In Dracula, there was some music that started slowly and quietly, started to fade in to give it kind of a creepy effect, and there were other sounds that came in suddenly and loud and strong to scare the audience, as well as add effects to what's happening on the stage. Sound is probably the part of technical theater that most people think the least about, but it can be used to help audiences have an emotional response to what's happening on stage. And I think that's so cool. The technical side of theater can be kind of hard to understand sometimes. Lights and sound can be kind of scary and kind of complicated. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the design process, but I hope that what I've said has helped you understand a little more about lighting and sound.